Avila's The Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Marty R is a private investigator in South Jersey, and he knew one day he would write a book about one of the most inspirational men in his life. But his mom asked him to wait till some of the people in businesses were no longer around, and there was a good reason for that. Marty.
Robbie begins with a young boy just growing up in New York City, and he's torn between street smarts and education. He thinks that he's the slickest thing in the world and he can just get over on anything. And because of the trouble he gets in, he's thrust into the business world. He's ordered to get a job. And he learns that, he's getting further with his knowledge of being book smart than he was with street smart. Inevitably, he winds up in a union that existed in New York City. The story then goes on what he has to do to make this union successful, and he sometimes had to do things that didn't always agree with his newly found morals. But in order to maintain the lifestyle that he got accustomed to, he went ahead and did it.
What kind of union?
Seamen.
Merchant Marines?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there any mob involvement?
Well, that's what it is. Yeah, it's a story of a union that nobody wanted to say no to. So what's the use of going to negotiate with somebody you're afraid of? I mean, they literally ran the shipping business out of the United States. I mean, you don't see any passenger lines now with an American flag on it because they're all other countries. Because the union got so powerful, you had American cruise lines that were registered to the United States and only used union workers. Well, if you now have to pay these people top dollar and you pay homage to the union that runs it, inevitably you can't afford to stay in business. I mean, at one point they were investigated by the FBI for some of their policies and principles, but it's the evolution of a young boy that grows up and wounds up there and had to decide, is this the lifestyle that he wanted to keep? In the book, it references that the union referred to a monster, and the monster was all the people that made up the union. They referred to it as Frankenstein, like the top bosses were the head of the monster, the legs were the people who did the work, the arms were the patrolmen and the goons who did their enforcement, and together they had a Frankenstein monster that could not be stopped. I was a young boy at the time, but I have one of those memories that I don't forget anything. And I used to hear conversations with my father in meetings and different things. And that's what inspired the book. Things that he used to tell me about it that I just never forgot. How would they keep the monster together and make sure that everybody that needed to be elected was reelected? The book, Robbie, explains how that was done. I watched many of the people in the union as I got older. And one of the biggest things that taught me in life was karma, because most of the people that did this stuff, and this was back in a day where many of my father's acquaintances and friends, they just had bad endings. And it taught me that, you get back what you give in life.
How did his life end?
Well, my father had developed cancer, and had a tumor around his vena cava, would cut off circulation. And it's funny because I've seen my father assault many people or pick their pockets. And I remember how hard it was for me to look at him in the hospital bed with his hands 10 times the size of a regular hand. And I'm saying, don't get me wrong, I love my father. But I looked at it and said, wow, I remember how many times that hand assaulted somebody. And look at it now, What I wanted to accomplish most of all is I wanted young adults to put the phones down and pick a book up. And it really showed how education really helped this person a lot, because when you're out on a ship, there was nothing to do but read. And it was through that book and through that street smart that allowed him to become what he became. He was able to run for office. He was able to become self-educated. I wanted young adults to understand that. I was lucky to have parents, mother and father, that instilled that the only way out of poverty is through education. And that's what this book really stresses.
Very true, Marty. Thank you. Imagine having 4 kids and out of nowhere, Hollywood wants to make all of them stars. It happened to Jody Yeager, and you may be surprised to find out how she handled her kids, the business, and what she learned from watching stage parents. It's all in her book entitled Big Dreams, Little People. How did this happen?
Is super weird, but my daughter, she was very, very, very shy as a 5-year-old girl. And one time we were at Burger King and she would not even ask the lady for a thing of ketchup. And I thought, what is wrong with her? I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to do something to help her not be so shy. My husband's a chiropractor and I worked at his office, and a little girl brought a brochure for a pageant to the office and asked if we would sponsor her. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, maybe this is something that would help my daughter not be so shy. And I showed it to her and I said, hey, you want to do this? This would be really fun for you. And she said, yeah. And I was kind of shocked that she would say yes. So long story short, she went to this National American Miss pageant and she did really well. We were like looking at each other like, who is this girl? On stage, she was not shy at all. And she ended up getting first runner up that first year. And she looked at us and said, I'm going to do this again until I win it. And we're like, okay. And the next year she came back and she won the whole thing. She won Most Promising Model, Best Actress, and she won a scholarship to an acting school. And we're like, okay, well, let's let her use it anyway. So that's how she kind of got started. Her brother wanted to do some acting as well. So I actually sent in his picture to an agent in New Mexico. And this was actually right before the pageant. And they said, wow, he's super cute. We'd like to interview him. So I took him and all the kids and they said, we'll actually take all of them. And I'm like, whoa. So we had an audition down in New Mexico for a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie. And 2 of my kids got picked up for that. And I was like, wow. And it was my daughter and my oldest son. And my oldest son didn't really enjoy it, but my daughter absolutely loved it. I mean, we filmed for like 12 hours that day and she could not get enough. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired and want to go home. And she was like, I want more of this. And so we went to an international acting competition and like 8 different agents from Hollywood were interested in her. So we decided to go out there for a while and had an awesome experience with that. In fact, at one point, all 4 of my kids were in different things. And so that gave me as a parent a good way to experience many different facets of the industry. So I have 1 girl and 3 brothers, and she loved it. One of them didn't like it, and a couple of them kind of tolerated it. It came to the point where she was booking quite a few things, but my husband had his business back in Kansas and had one of my sons. And so we were living the split family life. And so it kind of came down to a decision of, what are we going to do here? Because she could go big with this. And when it came down to a deep, heartfelt decision, and even her, it was like, family or this, and we chose not to pursue. So all the parents out there in Hollywood thought I was crazy. Like, wait, she has booked like 6 things and our kid has been here all year and has booked 1 thing. Why are you even going home? I'm like,
Right.
well, family is very important to us. And we came home, and that's when I decided to write the book. I thought, man, I've learned so much from a parent's perspective that I have got to write this stuff down. And I do like writing, so it just kind of started flowing. So that's what I did for the next 3 or 4 months. And then I didn't do anything with it really till 10 years later. I heard an ad from Page Publishing on the radio and said, did you write a book and never got it published? I was driving down the road and thought, yeah, actually I did. So I decided to turn it in. They liked it.
Did you find some obnoxious parents?
Parents wanted it more for the kid than the kid even wanted it, which I think is a not good thing. And even though we didn't stick with it, she learned some discipline and she learned some great things in that industry to help her do what she's doing now. And she's actually at 19 years old. She's going to be one of the youngest doctors to graduate from the chiropractic university.
So is this book more about allowing your kid to be a kid as opposed to trying to live through your child? Because I'm sure you saw a lot of that, right?
Yes. And I was pretty blunt about that in one of the chapters because there were some kids that were in the acting schools and had been in there for so long, and that was not going to be something that they were going to develop into stardom for, and it was completely obvious. But maybe that kid is a star at something else. I had to teach my daughter that, okay, we're going to go to this audition, you're going to do the very best you can, you're going to have fun, we're going to walk out of there, and we are not going to worry about the results. Yeah. If they want us, they're going to call us again. And I think that is a chapter that is really good in the book as well. And what I actually think that would be great would be to market it to acting schools for the parents. That's really who it's written for. And it will encourage them that even if, acting doesn't turn out for them, what they can learn along the way is phenomenal.
Sure sounds like it, Jody. Thank you. Val Richardson is a political activist in Texas. She heads a weekly group where they vent their frustrations and they write senators and congresspeople. Well, from that came her book entitled Venting Made Easy, Rhyming Stuff for Progressives and Other Thinking Individuals. Tell me about this group, Val.
We have fun. We talk about all this stuff. We get it off our chests and we write the cards and then we have margaritas. And then we're all happy.
There you go. So you're retired?
Oh, yes, indeed. I bet you have no idea how old I am.
I'm sure I don't. How could I?
Well, I'm 92.
Oh.
And the reason I'm still alive is because of Trump.
Oh.
I was expecting Hillary to win.
And then you would have died?
Well, I could have died happy.
Okay.
Because at least we had somebody qualified, and I would have been the first woman president, so I could have gone peacefully. Well, then when she didn't win, I thought, oh my gosh, I can't die yet. I have to keep working. There's stuff to do.
So that's when you decided to write Venting Made Easy.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to write a book, but when I was doing, in our group, we were doing all kinds of writing stuff and venting, and we thought, we get so upset sometimes we want to throw something at the TV. And I thought, well, that's rather expensive. Why don't I do something a little simpler where we can vent? And so I started writing these little verses to help out some of the candidates. So after I'd written a few, I just kept writing, and I got so many, I thought, well, I don't know, I just put these together and get them out more easily. It's mostly quatrains, but some of them are a little longer. And I don't claim that they're great poetry or anything because they were written as vents.
So what would you like people to do? Buy your book and read these things out loud when they're frustrated?
Yes. They can even throw the book at the TV if they want, if they don't like the rhymes. It'll serve some good purpose anyway.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites?
Well, remember when I wrote it was right before the election, so I wrote, Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds and whey. Y'all take note, she should go vote. Better to have say than whey.
Okay.
So that's one of them. Also, since I'm Miss Obama, so I wrote, where, oh, where has my president gone? Oh, where can he be? Obama's long gone, and oh, how I long for him to return to me. So they have things on gun control about the kids, doing a better job than the adults do, and have about the environment and the Trump presidency and women's issues. Women's issues, I wrote one, we know from things archival that society is all matriarchal, of violence have less, as I must confess, than society is all patriarchal.
Nice. Well, some of these are going to apply very soon because we've got the election coming up.
Right. Anything else we do isn't going to make a heck of a lot of difference in just a few years. You can have the most beautiful city in the world, and if we're going to kill the Mother Earth, what good is that?
You got that right, Val. Thank you. We have to take a short break, but we're coming right back, so don't go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books, and unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them, and they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Julie Kellner kept diaries from first grade through senior year of high school, and looking back through them, she thought, well, what a lot of us think. If I knew then what I know now. Not a bad name for your first book.
I grew up in South Jersey, a town called Medford, and growing up, I definitely wasn't the coolest kid. I wasn't the prettiest little girl, and I felt like I struggled a lot with not feeling accepted or not really understanding where I fit in the whole grand scheme of things. So a lot of times I'd be really upset over, a boy being mean to me or calling me names, or a girl that I thought was my friend not truly being my friend or talking behind my back. And I just struggled with a lot of insecurities growing up. And I felt very alone at times and very like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person in the entire world that this would happen to. But really, I'm probably not the only person in the entire world. And that's kind of where my thought process with the book came from, is hoping that other people might read situations and relate to them and think, wow, I was going through a similar situation, or yeah, I felt exactly that same way. And I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one, and that life does get better and it's not as bad as it really does seem at the time. So it starts in first grade, and already right off the bat, there's boy troubles, and I'm already boy crazy at the age of, 7, going through different situations of having a crush on the boy in class, getting the courage to tell him that I like him, only to have him say, you're not so cool. I definitely don't like you back, and feeling deflated and feeling like you're not good enough, and kind of battling those different emotions. I mean, I reflect even as it goes into my older years, into the first time I asked a boy out to be my boyfriend and getting rejected in school, and feeling like, oh my gosh, I got the courage to ask this boy out for the very first time to be my boyfriend and couldn't have been less interested, and just how you battle those emotions and get through the disappointments. And
How old was the boy? Yeah,
I think that was towards the 7th grade chapter of my book.
See, I'll never forget, as a mother, when I became the mother of 2 boys, that's when I realized why boys weren't paying attention to me in 7th or 8th grade. They're thinking about what am I going to eat? What time am I going to surf? They're not even trying to hurt your feelings, and yet so many girls are hurt by the way boys treat them at that age. So what do you want to see happen with this book?
I'm hoping that people at a younger age, as well as maybe even older people, could read this book. And I'm hoping people can relate a little bit to my situation. And I would love for them to read this and see my reflection 30 years old, looking back, and see that it's not that bad and you're going to be okay. And even if it gets you down a little bit, it's preparing for how you're going to handle situations throughout life. And it's going to make you stronger, and you're going to come out on top in the end. And to just always try to keep a positive outlook on things. I think it reminds me a lot of Chicken Soup for the Soul, when you read these stories of people going through traumatic events or different situations, and you just find a piece of it to relate to. What's different about my book is it has the actual handwritten portions of my diary. So it's you actually reading the misspelled handwriting of a young 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old girl, which makes you truly feel like you're stepping into my actual life, I think.
Nice touch, Julie. Thank you. K.L. Avila fears for our future, and she tells us why in her first nonfiction book entitled The Fugitive of 2012, We Are All Fugitives Now. What is the significance of 2012?
2012 was a big change. Life will never be the same in this country or the world again. And a lot of people predicted that over the years, but I don't think people realized how much it actually did change things. Actually, a lot of the changes that I predicted in this book now are actually happening in our country, and we are faced with many more changes to come. So I call it my John the Baptist book, asking the reader to be accountable, be truthful, admit to what is happening, and each one of us had a part in it.
What's happening?
I think the ones that are suffering the most are the young, like from 6 to 25. Young people don't seem to have a grounding to stand on now, and the suicide rate among teenagers is way up and continuing to rise because their parents have been too busy working and putting food on the table, I guess, to be a real family. And that's one of the things that has to come back. We have to make families very important again. Marriage has to become very important again. The rearing of children has to be absolutely essential if we're going to survive into the future. So when I say that we're all fugitives now, we're all running from something, from too large credit cards to the politics that we don't understand, children that we don't understand. All of a sudden, everybody has got something that they're trying to escape from. I state the facts, and then there's a portion where I do some predictions for the future. And then the second part of the book is what we can do individually to start over. It's generally chaos going on in our country right now. And I'm sure you're familiar with Jordan Peterson, who is out there trying to help young men, pleading for someone to give them some answers, how to think, how to be accountable, how to take charge of their lives. We are facing many cultural changes that if we don't manage this carefully, we're going to have many, many years ahead of us that are going to be painful. We have to come back to biblical principles, and people many Christians have gotten away from their early training and teaching, and we have to come back to the place where we admit the presence of God in our lives and that this is where the power is. And each one, that doesn't mean run back to find a church someplace. That means we just have to get to a place where each one of us is saying, all right, Lord, I don't know if you're real, but show me that you are and help me to walk into the future and manage my problems.
All right, thank you. Marcus West lives a remarkable life considering an accident that could have destroyed him. Instead, he started writing because he was getting bored. The name of his book, Mac's World, part fiction, part true story. He says the horses, cows, fighting, and sex are true. Okay, so tell me about this main character.
Mac.
Where's Mac? What's he doing?
He's the one that owns a whole bunch of stuff.
What's he own?
He owns land, and he used to fight and had sex, and owns a whole bunch of cars, old cars that he fixes up.
How'd he get all his money?
An invention, kind of like a paint shaker, but it's not for paint. For like household goods, like your ketchup or chocolate milk, you want to shake something up.
Okay, so he got rich, and he bought all these things, and he liked to party, and he liked to have sex, and he liked to travel. And then what happened?
He was working. He used to be a paint and remodeling guy. And one of his employees, he was teaching how to hang sheetrock on top of the ceiling. He dropped it, the other guy, not Mac. And then Mac fell off the ladder and broke his neck and his back. And that is true.
How old?
40-something.
Oh, my gosh. So then what happens?
I told him to get the hell out of here before I got up. And then I went to the hospital for a few weeks and wore a brace. I was like in a body cast. And he doesn't lose everything. He still has his other workers for him. He has, when he got the invention done, he started thinking about getting that invention started. He got the invention, and that's where all the money came from. And then he still kept doing the paint and remodeling. And then he had a bodyguard because he was too weak to defend himself. And his name was Bruce. And then he got a special attorney, Frank. They just followed me everywhere.
Did you come up with something so you were wealthy for the rest of your life?
Yes.
How do things work out for this guy? Does he learn an important lesson?
Just to have fun with your life. He still have fun. He can't ride a horse anymore. He likes to get on his yacht, and he has these houses, and he has some land. He just tries to live one day at a time with any pain. And he always has somebody, around him just in case something happens if he gets in a fight or something. This is just the first one. I've already finished the second one.
Okay.
And I'm on the third one right now, and then I got 3 more after that. This is a series.
This is all about Mac.
Yes.
And how he manages to continue finding joy in life even after he had such a tragic accident.
Yes.
All right, Marcus, thank you. Charles Spring takes notes whenever an idea comes to mind. He's been writing since he was 7, and when his sister passed away, he put his poems together with hers and wrote Poetry Dead to Society.
It's about love. It's about romance. I have a favorite poem called Not a Care to Fall. It come out really well when I was writing it. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just sitting down writing stuff, and it just come out of me like perfect. It's not too long, but I'll read you a short poem.
Okay, why don't you read me the short poem?
From out of the sky comes angels many, with swords held high and arrows plenty. Out of this time a leader is born. Many shall die prime, plenty may mourn. A true leader of kings, a raiser of peace, with his many wings shall battle decrease. No man can live, yet not that he die. No man can give of him if he never cry.
Is that about Jesus?
Yes.
You said that you wanted to awaken and bring back life poetry within our society. What does that mean?
I think that poetry is not appreciated as much anymore. It's not used like it was a long time ago. And I'd like to bring that back and show people it's needed in this world. It brings us to be more creative and more artistic. And
do you do open mic nights? Like, do you go out and read your poetry to people publicly?
Yes. Heaven and Hell Art Show in Houma. I read some of my poetry there. Houma, Louisiana.
How often do you do that?
Once a month.
Okay. Do you like doing that?
Yes. I got another book of poetry already ready to be published.
All right, Charles. It's a big step to read your poetry in public, but it's a great way to get it out there. Thank you. And it's a big step for you to tune into the Page Publishing Book Club every Saturday at midnight. Thank you so much. Thanks for checking in. And if you missed anything, you go to 710WOR.com and check out our podcast anytime you want. We will see you next time. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.